bit about Mid-Atlantic Tab just to get us started. Mid-Atlantic Tab is a collaboration between leading programs, which are listed with their logos below. That includes Marshall University, the University of Delaware, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia University. The TAB program provides technical assistance to communities and stakeholders to help address their brownfield sites and to increase their understanding and involvement in brownfields cleanup, revitalization, and reuse. The TAB program is funded by EPA and available to all stakeholders for free. All of our services are free, and we'll talk a little bit more at the end about what those services entail. Go ahead and go to the next slide. As I said, I'm Haley. You're going to hear from Carrie, Becca, and Matt a little bit later. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand things over to Carrie.
Thanks, Haley. I'm Carrie Staten. I'm the director of Mid-Atlantic Tab. I am mostly just going to facilitate our conversation today. This is sort of the end of our three-part series on community engagement. So you may have been with us for our previous sessions where we talked about the basics of community engagement and then some creative examples of community engagement. And you can find those resources of recording and slides on our website, which we'll share at the end. But today we're going to continue that discussion of engaging your community by talking about milestones. So we'll start by talking about why we want to celebrate milestones. Becca's going to talk us through some tools that we might use to recognize achievements in your project. And Matt's going to talk with us about how to measure and leverage impact and some creative ways to show that impact as well. Next slide. So why should you celebrate your milestones? Why is this part of our community engagement series? I think we'll get a little more in detail, but generally, celebrating milestones is a great way to keep people engaged throughout your project. We talk a lot in our trainings. We think about it a lot in implementing our projects about that community engagement on the front end, talking to folks at the beginning of your project to get input about what your project should look like. And then it can be easy to get stuck into the work and really put your head down to get things done and forget to take a minute for yourself to celebrate those milestones and also to communicate the small wins along the way that maybe the broader community is not seeing because they're not thinking and living and breathing the project every day like you are. So this is why we think it's important to talk about milestones. Some more in-depth reasons on the next slide. It can also help you build momentum. So if you have brownfields are large projects, they take a long time. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of sometimes really complex components. And it can feel like if a community member is not intimately engaged, if they're not working on the project, like I said, every day like you are or every week, they may see that you had a meeting one time and then you never talk to them again and nothing's happening on the project. When in reality, you're like a duck in the water, right? On the surface, everything looks like nothing's going on. And underneath, there's all kinds of people working really fast. And so making sure you're sharing that information, celebrating the little milestones that may seem like not a big deal to you, but are a big deal. Every milestone is a big deal, can help to build that momentum to keep the project front of mind for everybody in your community and to help make sure that everybody keeps up their excitement. It is another way to engage stakeholders. Everybody loves a party. We should always celebrate when we can. And so getting people engaged in the good that's happening can also help to keep them engaged throughout the project and help recognize the people that are doing that work under the surface to make sure that they don't burn out, that they feel appreciated, and that they continue to have the space and the energy and the time to participate in your project. It can also help to head off rumors. We all know that beautiful rumor mill. If you only have one meeting at the beginning of your project and then you never talk to people for the 3 or 4 years of your grant, for example, or you haven't checked in with them in many months, somebody's going to fill that void with rumors. So we used to do, I had a project once that was very susceptible to rumors, and we would start off our community meetings with having everybody write down what they'd heard on an index card, and then we would just go through and say, nope, that's not true. Let me tell you the reality in that realm, right? So if you're putting out information, good, accurate information, then it helps to fill that void that will get filled about rumors if you don't. And then, as Matt's really going to explain to us later, it can help build support for future work. So if you're continuing to demonstrate your success, continuing to demonstrate the impact of your project and the work that you're doing, it helps to help you build the case for your next project or for additional support for the current project. And so making sure that you're getting your project, keeping your project front of mind, documenting all of your milestones so that everyone can see them, and help to build more support. And not everybody wants to jump on at the beginning. Some people are not ready to jump on to help and work with your project, either as funders or sweat equity at the beginning. Nobody typically wants to be first in. And so they need to see that it's moving. We need people all along that pipeline. People are going to need a rest and need some backup, right? Sub into the game. And so making sure that folks see what's going on and keep that excitement up can help bring more people in to support that as well. Next slide. I think I'm handing it over to Becca.
That is correct. So I am Becca Phillips. I'm the Outreach and Education Manager for Mid-Atlantic TAB, and my section is about some of the different tools that you can use to help to communicate with the community and to, keep them updated and also solicit some feedback on the journey. So some of the favorite tools that we have when it comes to outreach and communicating with communities is basically these three categories. So you've got your media, various opportunities in the community, and then hosting fun events. When it comes to communications and media, there are some different ideas that are really helpful ways to be able to communicate at large to your public and your community. You've got, your typical media, so doing interviews or writing something up for a newspaper, whether that's like printed in there, like an ad, or even like an online newspaper, having like a press release, media, any kind of information really helps you to communicate your story, and you've got a little more control over that narrative, and you're also keeping everybody informed about what's going on and letting them know about any opportunities there are for their feedback or their ideas or their suggestions. Also, social media is a really popular one. We've got a little example here from EPA where they shared some updates about this project in Maryland, in Baltimore, and they included like a before and after photo and also tagged Maryland Department of the Environment so that they would be able to share on their respective page as well. Depending on the project, you might consider having like a dedicated page, or if it's like something that perhaps like your city council is spearheading the efforts, then it might make sense to have, communications come out through their page, and then any partners or stakeholders could be tagged in that post and be able to reshare as they wish and kind of amplify the message and get it to all the people who want to know and want to be engaged. Other ideas include Story Map, which Matt will tell us more about later and show us an example, or even doing something like making a video. And we've got a good example of that from the West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center to celebrate 20 years of their work since they were established in 2005. And they did a video series of select projects and involved key partners and stakeholders. So we're going to watch one of those videos, just kind of a short clip about some of the community impacts.
It takes a really long time to go from hearing about the potential of a project and then sort of shepherding that property all the way through the process.
We can try and help solve the mystery with the behind-the-scenes environmental considerations that inevitably come into play.
Brownfields helped us get drawings, and that allowed us to apply for historic tax credits, and it was tremendous for the project.
From the grant writing assistance all the way to actual financial assistance on your projects.
We could not do what we do without the Brownfields Assistance Centers, and I think it's something that really propels West Virginia ahead of other states.
There's no way we could accomplish some of these projects on our own. And so having that engagement and that partner support, just absolutely awesome.
All right. So our next category is to take advantage of community opportunities. So things that might come up within a community and or ways that you can really engage and solicit some of that feedback real time, because it can be really helpful to get some of these ideas and know what the community wants, what they need, what they're going to support. So some traditional ways include attending local meetings or stakeholder events. So going to like a city council and giving a project update, or asking like a specific question to get any of that like initial feedback, initial response. Also doing any kind of tabling out and about in the community, not necessarily even at an event, but you can also do that, say, outside of an event or at like a senior center at lunch or in the park. There are a lot of different places that you might run into people from a community. So just kind of considering what makes sense. In one of my pictures here, there was an event in Grafton, West Virginia, and they were doing their first Friday event in support of like local businesses and getting people into their main streets. And so we set up a table and, just talked to residents about the assessment grant and different work that was being done in the community, and gave out like candy and things because it was like during Halloween. So lots of ways that you can, plug in, and there might even be events that are already happening. So you just gotta ask, can I be part of this? Or if there's like a small business, maybe they'll let you set up a table or set up some kind of display or other information physically there. Additionally, you can also do different contests or competitions to get some of that feedback and some of that excitement. So things like if your project is with a park and you're putting in a pavilion or doing some kind of work for it, like maybe you can get ideas from the community of what to name the pavilion. Additionally, are there ways that you might be able to support a local business? Like if you have a contest or competition, can you give away a prize that is maybe a gift card for a local business? It's also great during those opportunities that you have with a community if you can make it interactive. So some different ways that we've seen things done, like asking people to like answer a question and write down comments, whether that's like during a meeting and you're facilitating that, or if it's more passive and there's a question written down and they're just, markers laid out that they can write down their suggestions, or like what reuse would you like to see this project have at the end? Kind of getting at that visioning and initial ideas that the community might have. Another cool idea that we saw in Virginia that the Department of Environmental Quality was doing. Here in this picture, they had 3D printed the site, and then there were these little blocks here that community members could actually like put, like this kind of building and see how it fits with the site and with the topography and actually like get their hands on it. And that was a really interesting way to engage. Our last section for outreach tools is related to hosting events. So not only do you want to be celebrating those really big, important milestones, like maybe a groundbreaking ceremony or ribbon cutting, or even like a 1 year anniversary of a project being completed, but you can also host events for things like having a volunteer day and asking the community to help with something related to the project, like landscaping, where you provide tools and supplies, and then people come and they get to help and kind of take ownership of the event or of the project and really get involved in that way. Also, hosting a fundraiser, helping to raise money, but maybe it's also at the project site and you're doing something creative and fun. Maybe there are bounce houses there as well. And then, of course, with your design charrettes, really doing something that's like hands-on can be really engaging and different and exciting. And, just any kind of ways that you might be able to make it fun or make it different, that's gonna be really helpful and really special. Like if you're doing a kayak launch, maybe you can give away some kayaks and then have people like test out the kayak launch. Balloons, bouncy houses, anything like that for those family-friendly events is really going to draw people in and build that excitement and really make it a good time. Another event that was done in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, to celebrate their getting their certificate of completion for the Brownfield cleanup. They made this cake that just says Brownfield to green, it's all clean. And, that was really fun for people. And they all got to, eat this cake and take fun pictures and things like that. So I am going to hand things over to Matt Ashby now to talk a bit more about how you might measure that and also give some more examples for you of what other communities have done.
Sounds good. Thanks, Becca. And if y'all would wave at me if my sound goes out, I'm having a little bit of tech issues here, bouncing back and forth between my phone and the laptop. So fingers crossed that everything works. My name is Matt Ashby. I am the Vice President of Development Services for Ayers Associates, and we are one of the Mid-Atlantic TAB consulting partners helping out with a variety of different projects, and excited to be here to support the team in talking about some different ways to consider measuring the impact. And as we've listened today, one idea kind of flashed across my mind regarding public engagement. It's the concept that if you didn't see it on social media, did it actually happen? And I don't have a Facebook account. I am pretty active on LinkedIn, but it's like you have to make sure that you're communicating the things that you're doing, because otherwise people are just going to assume that nothing's happening, like Carrie said. And so really starting to think about not necessarily just how am I going to plug this information into the acres reporting system, but how am I going to communicate with my elected officials, with my property owners, with the regular citizens in my community of what this project is all about. And those communication levels are very, very different. I love the picture, Becca, a couple of slides back of the Brownfield acronym. I'm totally stealing that. because that's how EPA talks. They talk about acres and ASAP and SEDs, and even from region to region, those acronyms sometimes differ. So trying to get a general public member to understand what's going on. This is a great way to kind of make that fun and engaging. But really, it's about thinking about your audience. And one of those audiences is future grantors, investors in properties, employers who might be thinking about opening a business in one of your brownfield sites. So those are a wide variety of audiences that you need to target and think about how you're measuring and leveraging that impact. So we'll move on to the next slide and go through a rapid fire of a couple of examples. And I think if you leave this session with one idea, it's the fact that we as public servants, most often in brownfields, are not in it for the glory. I mean, we're certainly not in it for the paycheck and the great benefits, but we're definitely not in it to say, "Hey, look at me, look at what I did." And the challenge with redevelopment is that oftentimes we as brownfield practitioners only play a minor role, a facilitating role in actually kind of moving things in, plugging a gap where there's a need. And the glory really needs to go to the property owner or the investors or the grantors, that are funding the project. And so the thing to think about is, how can I be the disco ball? How can I be the one that is reflecting and shining a light on all the great things that are happening around this brownfield project so that people are seeing it? You're not necessarily taking credit for it, but you are saying, "Hey, here's one way that our brownfield program helped to get this project moving, and look at what they did." So it's not a singular message. It is this and that kind of a message to make sure that you're approaching this in a comfortable way. Because I totally get it. The community that I worked on brownfields in as a local government official, we had a local family that invested their livelihood. They had a property they'd owned for 100 years, and they redeveloped it into something amazing. But brownfields helped. And so we were able to kind of tell that story of brownfields was a catalyst and helped with this small piece of this project, but look at what they did, in transforming that property. So kind of becoming comfortable with storytelling in that way is a really important element of this communication and bragging rights. Next slide. So how to tell your story. I'm going to bring a couple of examples from out west. In Wyoming, we're currently working on the statewide assessment grant and have worked really hard to brand that effort. It's called SPUR, the State Partnership for Urban and Rural Redevelopment. But the language behind it starts to tell a story about retaining our youth, attracting jobs, economic development, as much as it is focused on environmental issues and cleanup and kind of the technical side of things. We want to tell the story about how the SPUR program and brownfield funding is really helping our communities. And so that really is a key message, because we want to make sure that our state legislature is also supporting brownfield redevelopment initiatives. Next slide. So one of the things that we've done for this project is created an impact dashboard, and really focusing on the program's impacts across the state, statewide. We've assisted 26 communities, which is about a quarter of the incorporated towns in Wyoming. So that's a pretty impressive number when you start to digest that information. We've completed about 25 visualizations and renderings, 2 award recognitions, and 85 project sites across the state. So each of these elements gives us a story that we can tell a decision maker, either which communities we worked in and what we did. We've got a community that I'm trying to think of our smallest one that we've helped. Maybe it's 500 people on the small side, where we've provided some strategic assistance for a redevelopment of a gas station site. So that's a great story to tell, that we're not overlooking even the small communities. The awards are huge. So being able to take advantage of those award programs. The SPUR program was actually recognized by the American Planning Association for one of their Rural Innovation Awards, as well as the Western Planner Association as well. So that gives us the ability to always say that this program is award-winning, and that's a great thing for decision makers to hear. Those visualizations allow us to pull out drawings and illustrations, pretty graphics that tell a story and show people what type of work we're investing in. The vehicle miles driven, this one is probably not super popular with EPA based on pollution stats, but what it does is it does give us the ability to talk to our elected officials and say, we have crisscrossed the state and gone to every community, over the course of this 3 to 4 year project, and gives them a big number to say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of miles. You've been in a lot of places. So that's a little bit of how you need to start to think about documenting the impact of this program. And as we were talking in prepping for this session, I want to encourage people to not get caught up in the specifics of the stats. This is not intended to be prove it and you're wrong, or absolute numbers. So one of the issues we ran across in even pulling this slide together was that our number of communities assisted is constantly changing. We're getting calls about the state program every day, and so that number could constantly change. 25 is pretty good for right now, and we need to go back and update that. The miles driven is a pretty good estimate. We've identified who's gone where, and across the number of team members that we've had is pretty close. But find numbers that you're comfortable with, because it's less about the exact number and it's more about the story that you're sharing with those numbers. So the caption here, acres isn't the end. Actually, acres is only the beginning and should be just a component of your reporting process. So next slide. And I'm stealing some ideas. So I'm also a Main Street practitioner, which Carrie and Becca are also familiar with that Main Street world. If you're not, it's basically a nationwide effort consolidating or coordinating downtown revitalization, which happens to have a great cross connect with the Brownfield program. So Main Street programs have really perfected this idea of reinvestment stats, being able to communicate them. These were two that I had pulled off the web that I thought were visually attractive. One thing that I would note, they talk about new businesses open, new employees that have been employed within the district, public improvement projects, infrastructure dollars invested, and volunteer hours. So those are all great things and corollaries that Brownfield projects can also draw inspiration from. And I would encourage you to think about kind of using this as an approach to reporting your stats. Next slide. So sharing your work. So often I see it, we generate an amazing product, we generate a report, we might present it to a city council or a board, and then we kind of forget that we did it. And so sharing your work is absolutely essential. This was actually a product created under that SPUR program as an economic and brownfield strategy, strategic plan in anticipation of an application for an assessment grant. But it's got great content and information in there that the community would get excited about, your local officials would get excited about, and it can even be used for investors to encourage them, hopefully, to reinvest in that 1940 Main building. It's a great illustration, and to just hide it away, it would be a shame. So what I would do, look at doing with this information is converting it into infographic or social media posts that you can program ahead of time and say, all right, over the next month or 2 months, I want to send out 4 posts of here's some highlights from our economic development and brownfield strategy. Did you know, types of things, or wouldn't it be great to see 1940 Main revitalized? This report provides you with a snapshot of the things you'll need to do to invest in this building. Do you know anybody who might invest? So, things like that. Communication really needs to be a thought process that is ongoing. It's not a one and done. Next slide. So building momentum is really important. And, Becca talked about the public meetings. This was actually a project in an old county jailhouse where they wanted to revitalize it into a community space. And so bringing in the concept of branding to communicate, that starts to get you beyond your traditional brownfield audiences to folks that would normally just shut off when you say brownfields. If you show them a logo like the I got detained at the old jailhouse in Lusk, Wyoming, they're going to start looking at that in a different way. So branding can be a really powerful tool. That black key shape around that logo is actually the outline of the key that fits in the front door of the jail yet this day. Like, it is this plate iron piece of metal, that is the craziest thing that I've ever seen. But we really got to play off that concept of getting detained. And I think on the board there, it says, spend time in lockup. And it starts to ask what uses you would like to reuse that space for. So really starting to have fun with that and kind of get beyond just your traditional brownfield jargon. And the other thing that we really encourage these folks to do, we actually printed stickers. So that might be a stat for you. We gave out 250 stickers, but also being able to give them that logo and brand, we encourage them to run with some merchandise options and print some t-shirts and things like that they could then use to sell to raise funds for the project. So again, communicating with your public and using that to leverage money into the project. Next slide.
So harnessing excitement, again, so this started as a public meeting under a brownfield project. Fun fact, I think we were able to use some of the brownfield money to sponsor the music at the initial concert. So being able to be creative in how you leverage use of those brownfield public engagement dollars is a great way to get this type of project started. And lo and behold, again, after about 10 years, this project got built. It's actually a stormwater detention feature that also doubles as a, nope, and my computer's back up. All right. So it also doubles as a stormwater detention and public park feature with the intent of spurring redevelopment around the site. So kind of going around the park from right to left, there's a new marketing firm that built a brand new building. In the white building, there's a brewery that's been redeveloped. And actually just right now as we speak, there's 100 units of downtown apartments being built, largely spurred because of the conversations that Brownfield started. So for 10 years, people have been gathering now at this location to celebrate the neighborhood. And that was really all based off of Brownfields. And we can harness that excitement and tell that story to help motivate additional investment. Next slide. All right, so catalyzing a vision. This is actually a project that we worked on together with the Mid-Atlantic Tab in Rustburg, Virginia, for the Campbell County Training Complex. It's a former Rosenwald School campus, and they've got four or five buildings that they're looking to redevelop. They've made some great progress already, but they were having trouble communicating what the vision was to members outside of their board, and also communicating that vision internally to their board members of what needed to happen. So this project really focused on providing technical assistance to set up their mission and vision as an organization, to communicate externally with folks of what their goals are, and then if you will go to the next slide, to communicate internally as to what their action steps are and what they should focus on in the future as a board and as an organization. So really being able to use this tool to not only communicate what they've done and the impacts of the investments to date, it also gives that work plan to be able to move forward and tell additional volunteers how they can plug into the system. So again, really being creative. This is intended to be an outward-facing document for the community, for prospective investors to use over time. And I think if we don't leave our communities and our brownfield partners with materials like this that they can use, we're not completing the project in an effective way. Next slide. So priming investment is another reason to be communicating an impact. This instance, there's a brownfield site in a downtown context. It was right next to another brownfield building that had been abandoned for years. And the community said, hey, we want to invest in refreshing this space into a community plaza where we could hold events and concerts and farmers markets and things like that. So the Brownfield project actually helped create this concept sketch. And then next slide, which helped leverage them into other grants to be able to get the construction dollars to actually implement the construction of this project. So, they were able to demonstrate the impact of the overall program. And at the bottom of the screen there, being on my phone, I'm not going to be able to read what those stats exactly are, but that was a impact dashboard for this Brownfield grant that really started to talk about the amount of additional dollars that had been leveraged into the community. I think this one says it's at 4 million. I think it's pushing closer to 6 million right now as the community has gotten affordable housing grants to construct 20 units of affordable workforce housing. Those units are open and occupied. So beyond just the number of phase ones, the number of phase twos, that acres information, helping to illustrate this type of concept can help you get more dollars into brownfield sites, which the next slide, I think, illustrates another project that, this is actually the building next to the park. So the park is off to the right-hand side. And this was a really ugly, nasty, asbestos-filled building that nobody wanted to touch. We did the assessment. We got the reports done. But it was that park investment that really spurred this building to be sold, and it's now under active investment or redevelopment. So telling that story, and if you want to go to the next slide, can be leveraged time and time again. This is the same community, Craig, Colorado, and I know you guys are out there in coal country, many of you, and Craig, Colorado has coal generation plant using coal from the mines in Wyoming, and that power plant is shutting down. And so this brownfield grant was really about retooling their economy. And so one of the projects that the brownfield grant was able to focus in on was a new industrial park, identifying jobs that those folks could transition to. So by creating the initial concept sketch under the Brownfield grant, assessing the site where this industrial park was, we were able to support the city's application for, and I believe it's a HUD grant that's $1.2 million. It was just released earlier this week to provide for the underground utilities. And so just an amazing way to be able to layer things and stack things on top of each other to be able to bring more funding and actual community investment to these projects. Next slide. All right, so as I mentioned earlier about the Wyoming Spur program, we really see this as not being, it ain't a one and done. And I think that's the difficulty with brownfield grants. You know, so many of our leaders are used to a grant that pays for a sidewalk or pays for, you know, something tangible. Brownfield grants are a little bit squishy and nebulous of what they actually turn into, because it takes 2 or 3 steps down the road to be able to see the impact of it. But ultimately, what we're doing is turning local vision into lasting vitality. And if we don't communicate along the way, we're not going to be able to convince people that brownfields are an effective means of implementing that vision. Next slide. All right, so communication can't be an afterthought, and my system is still down, so I'm not going to be able to pull up the GIS story map that I was going to show you. But using GIS story maps is a great way to be able to document your progress throughout the course of a grant. You're able to essentially map out the different places in the communities where you're doing your phase 1 and phase 2 studies. But you're also able to include in there information from your public meetings and your engagements, maybe even video from those meetings to be able to show people exactly what you've done over the course of the 3 years. And just speaking as a practitioner, I had a community where we had been working for 3 years, and I had random documents all over the place in my file system. There was no single consolidated plan or deliverable that we were giving a community to say, yes, we spent $500,000 and this is what we did. And so the story maps really become that repository to be able to say, all right, here is a full documentation of everything we've done. Here's all of our sketches. Here's all of our plans. Here's all of our SEDs. You know, and some of that information may not be fully public, but it gives you the way to communicate that impact. So, so with that, that's everything I've got at this point. I will share out, if I can get back on my system, the link to that story map so that y'all can peruse that at your leisure.
Yes, and we can also definitely include that link in these slides for after too. So Haley just popped up our post-webinar poll. So please answer those questions. The data that you provide goes into our reporting requirements. And we've also got a couple minutes for some concluding thoughts. And also, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. While you're thinking through your questions, I'm gonna go ahead to our next slide, and we can let you know a little bit about how Mid-Atlantic Tab can actually help you with your community engagement efforts. Carrie, did you have something specific you wanted to mention with some of our services?
Sure. So, at Mid-Atlantic Tab, as we've said multiple times, everything we do is free. All you need to do is ask. If it is at all related to brownfields, and it almost certainly is, we can help you. Specifically in the community engagement realm, we can help talk about good community engagement strategies. We're developing some best practices guides. We're happy to come help facilitate your meetings. That's where I would love to be more often, is in a community facilitating a meeting. We can also just be at a meeting or be on a call on call to provide answers to questions about the environmental and the technical piece, to provide answers about EPA things in particular. We can help you plan that out. And another thing that Matt and I just were talking about this week is that we haven't really framed it this way, but we could do a sort of assessment of your community engagement strategy and talk through what, like, maybe you're not getting the people you want to get, and how might we brainstorm together to get those folks. I don't know, Matt, I'm not summarizing your genius as well as you did yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times we end up sitting on these webinars and it's like, oh, that's a great idea. That would be really neat to implement. And then we split our separate ways and we kind of lose track of some of those action items. So what Carrie and I were talking about yesterday was, is there an opportunity or a need for communities or even current grantees to say, hey, we'd really like to reach maybe a youth population, in schools. Could you come in Mid-Atlantic Tab and brainstorm with us on strategies we can use, actual examples, that you might be able to bring to us, and really start to create a plan or a communication strategy that would help your community, your grant, your grantees to be able to address these types of issues a little bit more savvy. Because, I've worked with a lot of environmental engineers and QEPs and wonderful, wonderful people, but visually graphic minded, turning things into an infographic. That's another skill set that we need to bring to the table. And so there could be an opportunity for Mid-Atlantic Tab to provide an on-call service, technical assistance to address those issues. So would definitely encourage folks on the call to think about if there's something that you've been struggling with that you might need assistance with.
Yeah, and I think more broadly, I would just say about our services, what we like to say is that they're responsive. We have some standard menu of things that we can do, but mostly we want to meet you where you are. And so if you're not sure if we can help you or not, or even what you might need, we're always happy to have a chat and think through where it might be a good fit for us, or what our recommendations would be. So always reach out for sure.